What is up, guys? My name is Matt Workman for Cinematography Database, and today we're going to be wrapping up our Film Industry Lights 101 series. We started with spotlights, we did area lights, and today we're going to be doing volume lights. And we're going to be talking about what volume lights are here, and then looking, like we always do, at some examples of how you would use them in the real world. Now, as we move on to our final episode here of this series, don't worry, this is not ending in any way, really. We're going to be doing a lot more lighting. What I want to tell you is that if you use the word spotlight, area light, or volume light on set, people might kind of look at you like, basically the terms spotlight, area light, and volume light's kind of like my own thing. That is how a CG or virtual cinematographer is going to talk about lighting. So they are frameworks and categories and a simple way in your mind to understand all types of light. Now, different lights and different lamps and different units or whatever you want to call them, they're going to be kind of like an in-between of these categories in some cases, but what it should allow you to do is to be able to assess a light, look at it, look at what's happening with that light and understand, is it doing spotlight things, is it doing area light things, or is it doing volume light things? And we're going to be talking about volume lights today, but I just wanted to preface that. I probably should have said that in the beginning, but now that we're wrapping up this series, these are frameworks to simplify and understand lighting, and they just so happen to work in the real world, in my case, if you watch this video series, and in the virtual world. So here we are in CineDesigner, and these are three lights that I think most people are familiar with, but if not, let's go one by one. So right here we have what I'm going to call for now a KinoFlow fluorescent tube, though I think fluorescent, as far as a technology, is pretty much dead in the water. I don't see a lot of innovations happening in fluorescent moving forward. They might even be illegal, like tungsten's going to be illegal fairly soon in the US as far as manufacturing goes. What's happening is that people are like Quasar, is that what they're called? They're putting LEDs in these kind of tubes instead of fluorescent. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. What we're talking about is the bigger concept of how it emits light. So this is a volume light, not a spotlight, not an area light, because it is a 3D object. And this 3D object puts out light in all directions. You can imagine if you took one point of light here, like just this one part of this bulb, it's going to put out light this way, this way, this way, this way. Basically, every spot on that bulb is like its own area light. But because it is a three-dimensional object, we go from area, which means 2D, to volume, which means 3D. And that's why I call these things all volume lights. So this is a volume light. You can kind of imagine the type of light it's going to put out. Now, the caps isn't going to put out any light, but everywhere else, it's just going to be emitting light in basically all directions. So picture, when you're looking at a light like this, picture every spot on this light is going to be emitting light like an area light. But because it's a 3D object, it is a volume light. And this is a KinoFlow tube, but really moving forward, it's really more of like a cylinder. That's the geometric shape. It's a cylinder. So honestly, this is a cylinder light, in my opinion. So KinoFlow tubes, Chimera bird cages, anything that's in this cylinder shape, it's a cylinder light. Now, we just happen to, at the current state of the industry, the most common cylinder light happens to be a KinoFlow tube or a fluorescent tube or a Quasar LED tube. But in general, when we want to generalize and talk about this, this is a cylinder light, which is a volume light. I know there's probably people watching this who are in the industry and they're like, that's not right. That's not the way the industry works. That's fine. You don't have to believe that right now. And like I said, if you use this on set, you might get some weird looks. But if you want to really understand lighting, both real world and computer, which I think is the goal for most modern cinematographers, this is the way to understand lighting, in my opinion. Take it or leave it for that. This is a lantern. Now, people call these Chinese lanterns and China lanterns or China balls. I think we're done with that. I think we can move past calling these Chinese lanterns because the world is not this. It's just not like that anymore. These don't come from China, or maybe they did originally, but they're not China lanterns. I don't. It's not because I'm Asian that I think that that's like questionably offensive. I just think it's incorrect. Okay, so a lantern, that's fine, and like a paper lantern, that's also fine. But really, this is a sphere, guys. What we're looking at is a sphere. It's a 3D circle, if that's what we want to call it. It is a volume light, and I have a skirt on the back of it, though I can get rid of that. Actually, maybe I can show you. This skirt can be, it's usually duvetine, and you can kind of like wrap it around it like this to control where the light's going to come from, but I'm just going to turn it off right now. This is going to emit light in all directions. Some people might call something like this, like a bare light bulb, an omnidirectional light, and that's correct. Omnidirectional lights do exist in 3D as well, but the difference is an omnidirectional light in mathematics purely originates from an infinitely small point source and evenly goes up from there. This is a volume light, so the size of this light will affect the specular highlights in an object, and it will also affect the way that the shadows fall. So it's a volume light, so the diameter of this light will change the way that this light emits, or light is emitted from it. So we're going to still call this a volume light, and this is a sphere light. It's a spherical light. You can call it a lantern, you can call it a China ball, I don't care, but it's not really. Moving on to our last example, there's a lot more. There's a ton. Like, area lights are actually one of the most common lights that you'll see in the real world, and we'll talk about that in other episodes about real world lights. Maybe I'll go out into my hometown and walk around and take some photos and then break down like, hey, that's an area light, that's a spotlight, that's a volume light. Volume lights are really common in the real world, but we're talking about movie lights at this point. This is a 2K space light. And it is a cylinder light as well, but the difference between this light and this light is that the top of this light is capped, so no light comes up from there, but the bottom of the light is not capped. So this cylinder light over here has caps on the ends. This one has caps at the top, but not the bottom. And these are space lights, and we'll be talking about space lights quite a bit. So that is our quick 101 overview of volume lights. People who are like, there's so much more to say. I could go on for hours, and I probably will in the course of this video series. This is the overview of volume lights. Let's move into some examples right now. Okay, so we are back in our boring 3-wall set, and I will make these sets more interesting in time, but for these lighting 101 demos, I actually think there's a lot of value to a very simple set with gray walls. These walls aren't white, they're gray. It's kind of like if the walls were all gray cards. I think this is the ideal environment in my mind right now to illustrate lighting concepts. So that's why this is so simple. It's like the Matrix room, and it's like very simple, very dark. Would actually be very difficult, I think, to do this in real life. So we have our camera here, and we're going to be looking through that in a second. And what we're starting with is our first area light right here. So we're going to be starting with, our first volume light, and this is a sphere light. So a lantern, if you want to call it that, but it's a sphere light. You know, they make space balloons like these that are gigantic. And we're calling those lanterns? Not really. They're spheres. So let's talk about the lighting that's happening here. So this is going to be emitting light in three dimensions, even though I'm only going to be showing that in 2D. So it's going to be going evenly, emitting from the center of this light here. And what's harder to show is that it's also coming forward and it's also going back. So if you look at the shadow on this shelf back here, you can see the shadow where the light's coming from. And if you look at the shadow on the floor, very interesting, it makes sense because this is what's happening. That's how that shadow gets cast. If you've ever done painting or tried to learn lighting in a traditional sense, like a 2D painting sense, you'll understand this very, very well. And if we look, the lighting on the wall, very even. Over here is a little bit of fall off. And then over there, also very even. So that is how the light is emitting from this, from this volume light. So let's look through the camera. I think we've all seen scenes like this. This is a very top light situation. Not the best, depending on what you're going for. It's a little bit horror-esque, but what we do get is an even illumination of the room, all 4 walls, or 3 walls in this case, and this kind of ambient light over him. Now, this won't be the video to talk about it, but I'll talk about how to use overhead volume lights to build ambient in a beauty situation or in a more just like, traditional narrative situation. And you don't really want to do it like this. You can, but I wouldn't recommend it. So this is what the scene looks like if I move our volume light behind the talent. I know it's like a little bit harder to see like that, but I think you can see here that the light doesn't make it to the front of him. So he's very silhouette, yet it's still very evenly illuminating the walls here. We do see the fall off happen as the light is only so big and the fall off is going to naturally occur like that. But we are essentially evenly illuminating the back kind of cove of these 3 walls here, yet we're not putting any light or contributing any light to the front of the talent. There's going to be a little bit of a backlight, but even that's going to be kind of subtle. And the reflection it's going to cast, the reflection it's going to create in the talent, given the size of this source and distance, it's going to be relatively small. It's going to be like a little dot as far as the specular reflection, but we'll cover that in the next video perhaps. Here's looking through the camera. Again, very silhouette, a little bit of backlight on the hands, very even illumination on the wall, and a very top source kind of shadow happening down there. Next, let's move the volume light to the side of the talent. So we're going to be side lighting him with that. And now we'll see a little bit of interesting stuff happening because this light is closer to this wall is much brighter. But these walls are dark, and this wall over here is the darkest, and that has to do with the distance from the volume light to the wall, to the object. But this is a common scenario and use of volume light like this. And in most cases, you would only be lighting the talent, and you would kind of flag this light off of all the walls. Because volume lights, pro tip, look amazing on people, especially spherical volume lights. They look really nice. So lanterns, they have been a secret go-to weapon of DPs shooting beauty and narrative. They're very fast. They're very affordable. It's been a secret weapon for DPs for a long time, and I'll probably do a whole series dedicated to that. And what the best part is that you can go get like an LED light bulb and a spherical lantern like this from IKEA, and you can start to use it, and it's going to look excellent. It's going to look really good. So here is looking through the camera. Again, kind of this nice side light from here, kind of a toppy side light. It's a little bit high. And then look at the shadows on the back wall, right? You can tell that this light's coming from this direction because of that shadow. Very interesting. Let's move on to one more example. So this is if we put the volume light in front of the talent. So it's basically front lighting him. So he's getting some really nice key, really nice lighting. And then the background falls off pretty hard because it's pretty far away from it. But these walls are still getting pretty much evenly illuminated. So let's look through the camera. Really nice. This is a very, very common use of a volume light like a sphere, like a lantern. This is going to look really nice. And the fall off is pretty steep as far as the background. So you could flag the lantern, but in a lot of cases, the fall off is going to be pretty subtle. The light that hits the background from here is going to be pretty subtle, especially if you stop down to exposing to our talent here. Looking at our final example for this episode, this is an array of volume lights. And this is a very important concept to understand. This is something that you will see done. This is a technique that you will see done on every major feature film, every major television show that's on a stage, every major commercial, every major music video that's on a stage uses this concept and technique. And we're not going to be digging too deep into it, but I wanted to show you how the film industry uses volume lights in an array, right? So we saw what it looked like when each one of these was on. When you put them together like this, you can almost think that all these lights combined are one volume light. That's one way to think about this. So we have very, very soft shadows happening because they're kind of canceling each other out and acting as one big volume light. And if they're all the same exposure, if they're the same intensity and same distance, if you get the distancing rate between these, you'll see that there really isn't much of a shadow on this person here. And I'm not going to be able to break this down fully, but let's look at it this way. The shadow that would be cast from here, if it was just this light, is canceled out directly by the opposite light. So those shadows are literally canceling each other out. Canceling is not the right physical word, but I think it's a nice way to think about it. Same thing this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. If you set up the array of volume lights correctly, you will get shadowless lighting. And it has to be from above because then the shadows just go down, so we don't see them. So although you will see a little bit of multiple shadows happening in certain places, in general, if you had people walk around this space, it seems shadowless. And this is important on white site music videos. This is important on almost, like I said, every major television set does something like this. It's usually muslin boxes. It's not going to be lanterns or space lights, but on a budget, when you're going for this look, you'll see this on a lot of independent features. It is an array of very affordable volume lights like lanterns. It's a very affordable way to do it. I think a lot of DPs, even like Roger Deakins and who else, Wes Anderson's DP, uses this exact technique quite a bit with their own specific units, but the concept behind this is an array of volume lights. So that concludes our Film Industry Lights 101 series. And again, you're not going to be finding this terminology used pretty much anywhere else in the world. I'm going to tell you that because this is a hybrid understanding of real world lights and CG lights, which I think you can understand with my push to make basically real world lights in the computer. I have to understand lighting in the real world and the virtual world, and I think that's actually going to be extremely valuable for you as well if you decide to ever work in virtual reality, augmented reality, virtual production, anything like that. Previs, cine design, understanding the real world lighting and then the CG world lighting, you start to have a different perspective on lighting in general, and that's what I'm trying to get to you guys right here. But this channel specifically is going to be dealing with real world lighting. It's my other channel, Cine Design Training, where I talk about how to do actual virtual lighting, if you're interested in that sort of thing. Moving forward from here, we're going to be talking about lighting techniques. So if you were interested in things like the volume light array, that's how we do a lot of things. I'll talk about that. We're going to be going through one by one, and I'm going to be looking at the techniques of using spotlights area lights, volume lights, arrays of area lights, arrays of spotlights. What do these things do? How are they used on set? We're going to be showing all of that here right in CineDesigner. I can show basically anything, and if I can't show it right now, I'll model it, I'll research it, and then I'll show it. Thank you guys so much for watching this series. I know that it's not the traditional film school that you'll be watching here. Moving forward, nothing on this channel is going to be the traditional film school. We're going VR, we're going AR as soon as that's enabled through certain devices. We're going to be doing things on this channel that have never been done before. And I'm also going to yell at the screen and rant about certain things, but that's a different video. I'll see you guys on the next one. You guys get out there, plan better, shoot better.